Would you please congratulate Beau? Beau was a 4-year varsity tennis player. He was California Junior College singles and doubles champion. He's an NCAA All-American tennis player at UC Davis, and he's a recipient of the Arthur Ashe Collegiate Scholar Athlete Award. So please congratulate Beau.
Thank you, Robert. Good evening, everyone. A joy to be here. Always a pleasure to be in Auburn, California in the springtime. I'm a physician in Las Vegas, and it's always a joy to see my family, and this was a wonderful reason to be back. 50 years ago, 1967, my parents moved just across Agard there by the railroad tracks, and this became my center of my life for about 10 years before I graduated in 77. And as a child, I remember going to Lincoln Way and E.B. Kane, and the future farmers of America with the ropes would grab me. And I'd get lassoed, and they'd let me go, and that was my first introduction to Glasgow High School. But after that, I would watch my father play tennis, and Radley McCord, and all the other folks here. And but that was a sport that my parents played. I wanted to play football and football and basketball and baseball. But unfortunately, I was blessed with a very unusual growth spurt. From the age of 10 to 17, my shoe size was my age, but I would not grow for those 5 years, and I would be 5'3", and I would be Tanner stage 2, which means I looked like a kid coming out of kindergarten. And that's not very healthy for football at Placer, as you know. So when I arrived here, I was probably the least impressive athletic scholar we've probably ever had. I had just finished E.B. Kane with a 1.5 GPA. I had failed Mr. Imbrecht's algebra class, which is amazing. I had ridden the bench for Fred George's 8th grade basketball team for the entire year. And things were looking worse when I showed up here as one of the smaller kids on campus. I remember walking out to meet Fred Moeller, who was the football coach for the freshmen. He said, "Don't put the helmet on." He sent me down to Coach Moss, and I ran cross country that year with my size 13 feet with big blue shoes. I'm sure that was quite a sight. But I did get to see the canyon, and that was quite nice. I went out for basketball. That was even more interesting. We had a player in my class named David Grayson, who many of you know. And David was big and mean. And I'm not sure he wasn't the starting fullback as a freshman. He should have been. And I had to take the offensive foul drill where I would run in front of him, and he would run me over. Now, there's a backstory. My sister, unlike me, was 5'9" and beautiful. And Dave was very interested in her. I think she turned him down. So he had it out for me. And I remember he was running at me at the old DeWitt gym, and as he came close, I dove out of the way. And Chick said, "Run the drill again." And I did the same thing. And he said, yeah. He then said, "To the bus," and that was the last time I played basketball at Placer High School. But Rad McCord was a new coach for tennis, and he would take any freshman, so I stayed on the freshman team. And we had a wonderful team. We had a bunch of seniors, and Phil Sweeney was our #1 player, who also was the best miler at school, which made for this wonderful dichotomy on Wednesdays when they had track meets. He'd be playing tennis, and then, as they say, milers to the mark. He would run off the tennis courts, run the 4 laps, and come back to the tennis court, and we'd cheer him on. It was quite entertaining. Over the next 4 years, I would develop slowly. I would never win a Sierra Foothill League. I would never be a CIF champion, and I would never be a sectional champion. But we opened up at the Auburn Racket Club in 1974. So with my neighbor Lars Gilbach, we took on some of the more fearsome duos. For example, our most toughest duo was a woman named Ann Fain, who's here tonight, and her doubles partner Joan Tangney, and they were ferocious. And we finally beat them, and then we moved on to their husbands, and over the next 3 years, we almost beat them. But I had wonderful matches with the coach Tom Berry, as Tom recalls, beating me like a drum for over 12 weeks, and then finally I got him and never lost again. And we all dreamed of being as good as Terry Tagney, who had beautiful form, a beautiful way of playing, a very classy style. And Terry was always the best until one day he wasn't. And we were on our way to college at that point. And it's interesting, when I think about my time at Placer, it wasn't glorious, it wasn't filled with titles, but it was a wonderful time for preparation, particularly for a late bloomer like me. And I also learned one other thing. I learned scholastically. I had Joe Beau, and then I had Fred Moeller for my last 2 years of math. I had Linda George in literature, and I also had John Chaney. And John Chaney, for those of you who had him, that was a magical time. John was really gifted, and I think that really gave me a love of literature and how to write. And I learned to study and how to learn. And I took those tools, I went to Sierra College. I met Rick Lonnie, my tennis coach there. We were horrible. But the nice thing about horrible is you get to play number one. So I played number one for Sierra College, and we were mediocre until the last week. The last week we would play the state championship, unseeded, unknown, unheralded. We ran to the finals. I still don't know how we made it to the finals. I lost everybody there badly during the season, that season. And we had run out of gas in the finals as I was playing a gentleman named Jess Asper. He had me down 6-2, 5-2. And I remember Rick looked at me as I was choking badly. He says, you know, it's a beautiful day. You're in the finals. You should enjoy this. And I remember my frame a little bigger, 6'2", with my big feet at that time of 17, pirouetting out into the court 2 or 3 times and sort of letting everything loose. I would win the next 5 games. I would win the next set. And I thought a miracle had come out as a state champion out of nowhere. And I think from that moment on, I was never quite the same. I started to believe. And I desperately the next year wanted to win the championships. I realized how flaky it was, how unbelievable it was to win that year. I would win the next year also in almost heroic fashion with body cramps going on, match points down, and winning a match that really was unexpected. The take home is I carried on to UC Davis, and that's really where I played my best. But the skills I had learned here were essential to that. I learned to compete. You know, when I think about my funny growth habits with these big feet, when I used to walk up to the library, I used to trip. Because if you ever put flippers on and tried to walk upstairs, you always fall. I spent my entire high school period falling upstairs. And there's almost a metaphor for how my life was. I used to think everybody was faster, quicker, more talented, certainly more mature. And I just thought, you know, but during all that time when I was losing and losing and losing, I never thought for one time that somebody wanted to win more than me or that someone would try harder. I still haven't felt that way. Maybe a better way to say it is I just hated to lose more than anything. And when I reached UC Davis, I had a wonderful run as the #1 player there. It was a great time to play tennis. We had Tim Mayotte at Stanford, Mike Bauer at Berkeley. Mike Bauer had beaten Jimmy Connors just a few months before we would play him. And here we were in the courts with these guys playing the dead even. And I was thinking, my God, this is as good as it gets. And it was fabulous. And before it was all said and done, I would retire and since graduate from UC Davis as the first Arthur Ashe Award winner, which allowed me to travel to the US Open as a guest of Arthur Ashe. Who gets that? I mean, it was magical. And, you know, I learned something else. I had a funny habit. I started becoming pretty good in math and pretty good in science. I started scoring well. And before I left UC Davis, I would take the medical college aptitude test, MCATs. And oddly enough, I'd get an envelope and I'd find out that, gee whiz, I had the highest score in chemistry and in physics and scientific knowledge in the country. And I said, that's impossible. That doesn't happen to some kid from from Auburn, California. And next thing I know, I'm at Harvard. And now I have a ticket at Harvard to travel the world. So now I'm living in France, I'm living in Australia, I'm living in Africa. And then I'm playing basketball professionally in Australia or in France, and I'm going, who gets this life? And now I'm here tonight, looking out at you, thinking, this is totally a mind blower. And because I know in 1973, when I walked in this place, I wasn't thinking about anything, just surviving and not ending up in the freshman in some locker over in the math hallway. So it's a glorious moment for me, for my family. One last comment. 1967 we moved here. 1977 I graduate. Our centennial I came back. 1997. It was a wonderful party for those who attended. I'm walking through, the big event down in Old Town, and people come up to me because, I've got other brothers, they know, sort of know us. So, Beau, what have you been up to? And it was funny, I realized I graduated in 77 and I got my first paying job 1 week before that. And I said, I just got my first paycheck, I told everybody, because I'd been lost in the university for 20 years. And they looked at me like, oh, doing time or what? No, it's pretty good actually. And that day I had one of my dreams came true. I got a chance to play basketball with Ben Hart-Peak because we played the 80s against the 70s. And for me, Ben Hart-Peak was the finest athlete I've ever seen. And it was just a delight to be on the court with him. And I got a chance to stuff a basketball, and I thought, oh, I wish Tom Berry could see this. So that's a fun memory for me. So thank you, everyone. Good night, and with that, it's all. Thanks.